My basement is still full of physical books, and I want to show you some more of them. Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and this is the third tour of my physical bookshelves. I recently showed you my NYRB Classics library, and now I want to go on to my mass market paperbacks. I shelve my mass market paperbacks all together. It is a mix of books, and so you'll see genre fiction, literary fiction, and nonfiction all intermingled. So what are my mass market books? Assignment P. King by Edward S. Arrows, a men's adventure or espionage book from the 60s. The main character is Sam Durrell. Assignment Black Viking by Edward S. Ahrens, another Sam Durrell mystery. In the Belly of the Beast, Letters from Prison by Jack Henry Abbott. This is a sort of memoir and prison letters. Norman Mailer was so impressed with this author that he got him released from prison early. Jack Henry Abbott stabbed another man afterwards. Shardik by Richard Adams. This is a fantasy of sorts about a distant country, a fantasy land where they are worshiping a very large bear. Seven Serpents and Seven Moons by Demetrio Aguilera Malta. This is translated from the Spanish. It is my one and only Ecuadorian novel. Greybeard by Brian Atlas, a science fiction novel from the 60s. Society has collapsed and returned to the Dark Ages. The Long Afternoon of Earth. The Earth has stopped spinning around the sun. One half is in complete darkness, the other half eternal sunlight, and strange things are going on. Report on Probability A by Brian Atlas. This is supposed to be a very mind-bending novel. Evil Earths by Brian Atlas, a collection of science fiction short stories about counter-Earths, alternate realities, where Earth has gone bad. The House of Spirits by Isabel Allende, translated from the Spanish. This is about a country gone to a dictatorship and what it's like to live there. Gabrielle, Clove, and Cinnamon by Jorge Amado, translated from the Portuguese, about life in Brazil. The Green Man by Kingsley Amis. Kingsley Amis is more famously known for his humorous novels, but this one is horror. Bless Me, Ultima by Rodolfo Anya. This is about immigration to the United States from Mexico in the 70s. Night Dogs by Kent Anderson, a novel from the 70s. This is about a police procedural in Portland, Oregon. Cold Victory by Paul Anderson, a science fiction novel from the early 80s about World War III. Winesburg, Ohio by Sherwood Anderson from the early 1900s. It is a collection of short stories about a small town. Cluster by Piers Anthony, a science fiction novel or maybe a fantasy novel, or maybe something in between from the 70s. Firefly by Piers Anthony. This novel is reportedly rather disturbing because Piers Anthony goes into some sexual exploits that most sane people would leave alone. Microscope by Piers Anthony, a science fiction novel from 1969. A Twist in the Tale by Jeffrey Archer, a British thriller from 1988. The Doll Maker by Harriet Arno, a literary American novel from the mid-50s. I was supposed to read this for a university class way back in the 80s. I never did. Thunder Alley by Bert Arthur, a very old Western paperback. Freighter Moon by Neil Asher, a science fiction novel. Gridlinked by Neil Asher, a science fiction novel. Caves of Steel by Isaac Asimov, one of his science fiction novels. Isaac Asimov, The End of Eternity. Isaac Asimov, Foundation, the first book in his Foundation trilogy, a collection of short stories, essentially. Foundation and Empire by Isaac Asimov, the second book in the Foundation trilogy. Second Foundation by Isaac Asimov, the third book in the Foundation trilogy. Mulata by Miguel Angel Estaras, translated from the Spanish. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature. He is a Guatemalan author. Philosopher or Dog by Machado de Assis, translated from the Portuguese. He is a Brazilian author. The Underdogs by Mariana Ozelia, translated from the Spanish. This is a famous novel about the Mexican Revolution. Webs by Scott Baker, a horror novel from the 80s. It's about spiders. Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin, one of his most famous novels. The Drowned World by J.G. Ballard, a science fiction novel from the 60s about the planet that's getting too hot. Who would have thought someone thought of climate change before the present day? Cast of Fear by K.G. Ballard, a mystery novel from the 50s. The Ice Planet by René Barjavel, a science fiction novel translated from the French, written in the 70s. The Future Times 3, novellas by Ray Barneveld, the French science fiction author. Books of Blood, Volume 1 by Clive Barker, the first in an extraordinary volume of horror short stories. Books of Blood, Volume 2 by Clive Barker. Books of Blood, Volume 3 by Clive Barker. The Inhuman Condition by Clive Barker. This is a continuation of his Books of Blood, but for whatever reason, for the American edition, they changed the title from Books of Blood, Volume 4. In the Flesh by Clive Barker, also known as Books of Blood, Volume 5. The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. This is his short horror novella that was the basis for the movies Hellraiser. The Bridge by Ian Banks. This is a literary novel. This is not one of Ian M. Banks' science fiction novels. Accession by Ian M. Banks. This is one of the best novels in his Culture series. Ian M. Banks, Inversions, another one of his Culture series. Look to Windward by Ian M. Banks. I'm not sure if this is one of his Culture novels or not. I haven't read it yet. Continental Drift by Russell Banks, an American literary novel from 1985. Chimera by John Barth, 1972. John Barth is one of the great postmodern novelists. Giles Goatboy by John Barth, another postmodern novel from 1966. Coalescent by Stephen Baxter, a science fiction novel from the early aughts. Raft by Stephen Baxter, a science fiction novel from 1999, the first in his Zeeley sequence. Ring by Stephen Baxter, another book in his Zeeley sequence. Flood by Stephen Baxter, a science fiction novel where there is an enormous amount of water stored in the center of the earth that comes to surface and floods everything. Vacuum Diagrams by Stephen Baxter, a science fiction novel. Bloodletter by Warren Newton Beef, a horror novel from the 90s about vampires in Los Angeles. Just look at that cover. The Coming of Age by Simone de Beauvoir, translated from the French. This is a nonfiction work about getting old. She was married to the Nobel Prize winner Jean-Paul Sartre. The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir, short stories translated from the French. The Image by Jean de Bourgh, translated from the French. This is an erotic novel. The Dean's December by Saul Bellow. Bellow was a Jewish-American novelist. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature. This book is from 1982. Mr. Summerlill's Planet by Saul Bellow from 1966. In the Ocean of Night by Gregory Benford, a science fiction novel from the 80s. Jailbait by William Bernard, a shocking but true account of teenagers gone wrong. How true is it? My guess, not too much. The Demolished Man by Alfred Bester, one of the most famous science fiction novels from the early 50s. Legion by William Peter Blatty, a sequel to The Exorcist. And it has a fabulous step-back cover. Cities of Flight by James Blish, a quartet of science fiction novels from the 50s. Firebug by Robert Bloch, a story about someone who likes to set fires. Psycho by Robert Bloch, his most famous novel, and this is one great horror story. Pleasant Dreams by Robert Bloch, a collection of horror short stories. Boogeymen by Robert Bloch, a collection of horror short stories. The Skull of the Marquis de Sade by Robert Bloch, another collection of short stories. One of these short stories was turned into the famous Hammer film, The Skull. Okay, that is my first 2 shelves of my mass market paperbacks on my tour of physical books that I own. I guess I will continue this tour for at least another few shelves. Thank you so much for watching, and keep on reading.